Welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. My name is Jake. I've got Sean over here, my wonderful, wonderful co-host from across the pond. As you could say, in the video watchers, we'll see, and for the audio listeners, we'll try our best to describe everything. But Sean has even more decor in his new background.
I do. There's more objects, more hanging things.
Mostly
This
just
is
wall decor.
Yeah, it's cute. It's great. I'm finally basically moved in, which is great. I'm so excited to sit down with my binders of cards and actually get to like building random decks again. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I was able to put together my post-rotation Alakazam deck because I played in a pre-release this past
Yeah.
weekend, Sean.
That's awesome. How did it go?
Yeah.
I didn't get to play in one. I just been so locked in on unpacking.
Well, you moved to a different country, so that's a whole, I can understand that. I just sit here in Vegas. But I opened the Tyrantrum pre-release kit, which I was like, thank goodness I now have Pokepads. I've got my full playset. I dodged the superior deck that had no Pokepads in it. I still hate the system that they did though, where there's the varying level. But I do understand because the superior deck doesn't need the Pokepads because they include like Dawns, the Forest of Vitality. Like you find your evolutions no problem, pretty easily. So, I did win one game by decking out my opponent, which was really, really cool. With Tyrantrum's attack, it was a Tyrantrum mirror match, which I don't know if you've tried that mirror match, but it was awful. It was miserable because Tyrantrum doesn't two-shot a Tyrantrum. It's a three-shot.
Oh God.
So once I realized that it was going to be like a three-shot thing, I just tried my best to flip good coins, and hit heads as many times as possible.
Well, I mean, look, you hit your heads, they didn't. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I played a whole pre-release format with a Diglett that had the ability to stop your opponent from attacking, and you got to flip two heads for it. And if one of them was 2 coins, and if one of them's heads worked, I won by decking my opponent out with that Diglett.
I was gonna say flipping 2 coins for that attack is actually like it's pretty good. I mean, because that's statistically.
It might have been in the format where we had the stadium that let you reflip, like the slumbering something. I don't know. It was like a reflip. There was like a reflip stadium a few years ago that let you reflip.
I thought that was only
attacks.
for trainers. Was it on attacks?
It was on attacks. So it was like
That's
worse
actually
than
okay.
Fliptini.
I have a problem with that because statistically, right, like on 1 coin flip, it's 50-50, but I don't know the exact math, but 2 coin flips and you only need to hit 1, that's going to be over 50-50. And if you get to redo those 2 coin flips, that's a pretty high percentage to hit heads.
It may have been 2 coin flips with that stadium, but 1 without.
Oh, gotcha. So, that's still higher than 50-50, which, you know what, I'll take that gamble in a pre-release.
Exactly. Like I was just like, yeah, we'll do it. And I just decked my opponent out because I'm like, hey, you're never going to get to attack. I'm just going to put Diglett in the active and say go.
I did also get, I didn't get the first partner packs that came out with the like 9 illustrations of the starter Pokemon, but I did get the other one that had the 3 starters as promos and had like 5 Ascended Heroes packs, the pin collection.
Okay.
That was real nice. So I'm like casually doing a little bit more Pokemon right now.
I had somebody over last night and we did open up the partner pack. He brought it over.
Oh, how was that?
I mean, it's cool. The cards are really pretty, but the prices on these, have you seen the prices on the first partner Pokemon?
So is it on the boxes themselves or the cards themselves?
On the cards. The boxes are like sealed by whatever. The actual cards though are like, I think between $20 and $40 for each card of the first partner Pokemon, which...
Yeah, I was going to say, like I saw casually through the like collector app one day when I was like checking the price of something that I saw that a lot of them were like in the 25 to 30 range, but 40,
I
holy moly.
it's crazy. I was at that convention. I was at an anime convention, and one of the stands, several of them actually had those cards, and they were like labeling them at like 40 € for the Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, and I was just for each, and I was just like, I look, they're cool cards, but I cannot imagine that there will be so little inventory of this printed. I just can't believe it. Like, it's a step above a McDonald's promo. That's no
Yeah.
shame to McDonald's promos, but like, it's a pack that has 3 cards in it, and you're guaranteed 3 of the illustration rares. It's just which generation are you getting? And we're probably going to get 3 more of those things, packs, throughout the year to
Mhm.
celebrate gens 4 through 6 and 7 through 9. And so I'm just like, it blows my mind. I'm like, if these stay at $30 or $40 each, then like, this is just
I
Boomer
was gonna
Sean over
say,
here, not understanding
I'm trying to
money.
find I'm trying to find listings like on TCG Player for those cards specifically because they have to be there, but like TCG Player only has like the box
Oh,
and like a booster or like a case of those boxes. They don't have the actual cards up yet. I was like, what are we doing in the big 2026?
I mean, I
Come
think
on.
the prices will come down. I know that they just
Oh
came
yeah.
out like last Friday, but I want to see those suckers hit like $5 a pop. That's,
Yeah.
I think that is not an unreasonable ask for a promo. Like, and
Yeah.
it's not even a promo from like an ultra premium collection like Charizard or Mew. It's just a promo pack from a $20, a should be $20 thing.
Yeah. And this
So,
especially because you gotta get 9 of them. But
yeah.
there was a little bit of news this week, and with rotation happening right around the corner, Sean has put together a cool little for all you video people, audio, we'll just be talking about rotation. But for the video people, Sean has put together a PowerPoint
Yeah.
for post-rotation conversation, which I think is a first for the Metapod podcast. Actually, I don't think we've ever done a PowerPoint before,
You know,
to my knowledge.
I could have zhuzhed it up. I just didn't. More than half of my job, Jake, is making slideshow decks, and decks is what we
Yeah.
call them. Uh, but I could have zhuzhed it. I just didn't. So, it's very basic, but, we'll be able to click through.
Hey, you know what? And I looked through it already. There's some good stuff in there, especially for those of you that are trying to prepare for post rotation format happening on PTCG Live later this week and in real life in like 2 weeks, which I've already said my piece about that.
Yep.
But anyways, going into a little bit of the news, Chaos Rising. We've talked about this set a little bit as more information has come out, like product information, trademarks, all that stuff, designs, and things like that. We've got potentially a teaser for the pre-release promos for Chaos Rising because of Hong Kong and Taiwan's latest reveals that they've done. They've shown off some alternate art promos in traditional Chinese for Crobat and Gudra for their Ninja Spinners set. Because in Hong Kong and Taiwan, players who win 3 rounds of Ninja Spinner tournaments will receive a promo pack with one of the 2 cards. And historically, when they do these promotions, these promo packs, stuff like that, those usually get turned into our Western or English pre-release promos.
Yeah, and the other 2, which were revealed as alternate arts a little like a few weeks ago, I guess, were like Ampharos and Blaziken. So we're not necessarily going to go over what the cards
No,
do,
no, no, no.
but
It's Ampharos and Delphox.
Delph. Thank you, Jake. I
Oh,
don't know.
whoa.
Whoa,
Hold on,
whoa,
hold on,
whoa,
hold
whoa,
on.
whoa. That
Wait a
ain't
minute. Let's back
Blaziken.
up. Let's
Okay.
let's talk about that for a second.
Delphox. I don't know
Blaziken.
why. I don't know why
Somebody
Blaziken
get
came.
somebody
Is it?
posted in our Discord the office meme where Pam is like, we need you to tell the difference between the 2 pictures. And it's a picture of Delphox and a picture of Blaziken, and then it's Sean's face. And it says they're the same picture.
You know
Like
what?
somebody do it,
I should
please.
stick by my guns on that one, Jake, and just be like, they're the same. That's the same Pokemon. I don't care that one of them's a chicken and the other one's a fox. That's the same Pokemon.
Yeah, you should have played it as a bit. You should have played
Yeah.
it as a bit.
That's right. Anyways,
But anyways, Ninja Spinner is gonna be releasing in Japan or did release in Japan on March 13th. It's already happened in Hong Kong, releasing later this week on March 27th. And then for our English Chaos Rising set, it is gonna be releasing on May 22nd. Remember that later this week is the full release of Perfect Order. And so then after Perfect Order, that you could then look forward to Chaos Rising.
so cool that we probably know the pre-release promos.
Mhm.
But one other little bit of news before we immediately go into post-rotation talk. We did have Houston regionals. I didn't really get a chance to watch much of it, and I know you didn't either, Jake. You were very busy
Well,
casting.
I actually
Did you watch them?
watched, hold on. I watched a lot of I watched most of top 4, a snippet of, like, the ending of top 8, and then the finals. I watched the finals. Because so I casted a One Piece regional this past weekend for Mesquite in Dallas, which was right across the way from Houston, Texas, by the way. But anyways, for that regional, because it is Central Time, it
Ah, yeah.
ended pretty early for me because it was only in One Piece on day 2. It is only the top cut competitors, top 32. So it is much shorter than a Pokemon Day 2 in a regional. So I was able to catch the tail end of that on stream
Okay.
because after I logged out of the regional, I just laid down on the couch and I just did nothing.
Jake, did you see the penalties that were given out for the person seeing extra cards on both
Well,
what
so
top 8 and
this
top 4?
yeah, no. So this was top 4 and the finals. There were multiple people in the championships. And I get it, like in Pokemon, especially when you're doing stuff like draw two, like because the infractions happen between the Dracloak ability from Sammy Goldshine and then Yoshiyuki Yamaguchi on, I believe it was Mega Kangaskhan's ability,
To draw
the
two.
what is it called? Run errands.
Uh,
Yeah, the draw two. I believe it was
yeah.
draw two abilities each time. It was either that or on Pheasantipity for Yoshiyuki. But both players seeing an extra card accidentally, because when you're drawing and you're doing that like multiple times per turn, you get in like a rhythm. And so you think that you grab the top 2 on the top of your stack, and then you pull it and you accidentally grab 3. Or, when you do it one at a time on that very end, you accidentally grab an extra one. And a lot of times there's no, like, I would say like 99% of the time, there's no malicious, right? It's
No.
just what it is. Because a lot of times these game states as well, a lot of times these game states, there's already been like a first turn deck search, right? That has already happened or something. So like players know what are in their decks. And so it could just be something that's like, hey, don't do that anymore. Put that card at the bottom of the deck or reveal it to the other player, right? And then put it at the bottom of the deck and then shuffle it up, whatever, to randomize it back in so there's no like unfair advantage of knowing what's at the top. But yeah, I would just say if you're someone that's drawn to off of these, just take one card at a time. I've seen players just like take the one card on the stack, put it on the top of the table before it's revealed to make sure that it's only one, and do that. Make sure that you're just being careful, man. Because I mean, there was one game for Sammy Goldstein I remember in that top 4 where he got a double prize penalty, and it absolutely cost him that game. Like I think he was playing Henry Chow in top, was it top 8 or top 4? I think it was top 4.
Yeah.
Uh, or no, top 8 because both players, Sammy finished 7th in the event, and Henry
Oh, right,
Chow
right.
finished
Yeah, it
top
would have had to
4.
have been top 8.
Yeah. It was. So I watched top 8, top 4, and the finals. But anyways, he would have absolutely had that game that I think could have changed, the outcome of that, of Henry Chow winning the best of 3 series. So,
Mm.
Yoshiyuki Yamaguchi, I think, still won the game that he got the double prize penalty, but that game was also incredibly intricate because Miguel was using Badu a lot in that game, in that best of 3. But yeah, I mean, just just be careful because you don't want to get those penalties.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, Yoshiyuki did win everything with Mega Absol, Kangaskhan. I think a bit of a surprise for people going into this weekend. It's not that the deck is bad, but I think people were a little less hype on that deck in particular. And to be honest, the results, there's not like a ton of Mega Absol in top 8. I don't remember when I saw the meta breakdown. I don't think that Mega Absol was like a really high meta share. So, you
Mhm.
know, probably wasn't the perfect weekend for the deck, but one player managed to win it all with it, so fair enough.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if you look at Yoshiyuki as well in the last like 6 months playing this deck, got third over at LAIC in Sao Paulo with this archetype, got 31st, top 32 in Birmingham regionals in January. Had a little bit of struggles in EUIC going 240th, maybe not exactly where he wanted, but still got some points. And then winning in Houston. So, I mean, he's been on the deck, he's been grinding the deck. He's one of the best players with the deck in general.
uh, the other decks, though, in the top cut, I don't think were any surprise. I think, especially if you listened to our episode last week, you would not have been surprised by the Frostlass Monkey Dory deck that did well in, I believe, a special event in South America or
Mhm.
Latin America. But here, 2 of the top 8 taken up by Frostlass Monkey Dory with the Ethan Sudobudo and all that good stuff. A couple of Dragapults. I think honestly the biggest surprise, if you're looking at like all the decks here, is somehow Henry Chow managed to get fourth with Gardevoir. Like, don't get me wrong, great deck,
I was gonna
fantastic
say,
deck.
is it a surprise that he specifically got top
Well,
4? Because
no,
I
no,
don't know. I would say that I would argue that that's not a surprise.
I would say it would take a Henry Chow to get top 4 at this type of
Yeah.
event because all of these dark decks, right? You're looking at, granted, Monkey Dory Frostlass is not really a dark deck in the same way. It's not a dark deck, but like you do have Absol, you do have Marnie's Grimmsnarl, you do have Zoroark. Like, there's a not insignificant amount of what I would consider to be not great matchups. So
Mhm.
seeing Henry Chow get there, probably partly on the back of how many people are playing Dragapult. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see. It's cool to see. It's still very like, as much as I'm sort of bored of the same decks at the top, I got to admit it is a pretty wide array of options.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about this rotation of options, right? We've talked about the last several weeks how this format is just like a rotating wheel of like what are the top decks. Like no Goldango in this top,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that we talked about has been a good deck in previous weeks, but now in this week because of the meta shift, it was not a great deck, at this point of the game. It was really, I mean, I know that we talked about Frostlass Monkey Dory with like the new additions and Ethan Pseudo and also stuff like the Mega Frostlass
Yeah.
EX, right? As an option that I know that Alex Shemansky, who plays third with Frostlass Monkey Dory, was playing one of those. It was really cool to see 3 different variants of Frostlass Monkey Dory in some capacity, or just Frostlass in general, right? With 1 Grimmsnarl and 2 Frostlass Monkey Dory lists, making it within the top 8. Probably like I would say like one of the best showings I feel like that we've had of Frostlass in general since its release, I would say. Debatably, it's debatable on if it was, but just like being able to slow down the game with Badu, kind of like what Dragapult does, and then build up these damage counters with the Frostlass. When there are so many Pokemon with abilities, you talk about Dragapult with all the Dracloaks having abilities, even the whatchamacallit, the Mega Absol deck. Mega
Oh,
Absol,
right. Yes.
having a bunch of abilities as well with like the Kangaskhan, their own Monkey Dories, things like that. Zoroark with the trades, Goldengos with all those abilities, right? On those Goldengos. It's really interesting to see and kind of have everybody force it to be a one prize deck, but then come in with this Frostlass to where if you don't have a Goldango that's going to one shot you, Frostlass can do so much damage if you just let your opponent build up this big hand.
Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see how that translates over post rotation. Like I'll take a quick look at the deck and just say like what are we actually losing, but for the most part, I don't think the deck really loses anything important. Like Iono, that probably is a little annoying, but like,
Yep.
there's other
Iono
options.
and a couple of your supporters
Arvin.
like Iono and Arvin are the biggest
Yeah.
ones in my opinion. And then other options as well because this deck, including a ton of basic Pokemon that are very important, called Monkey Dory, and
Mm.
then also just various different ones like your Ting Lu, Pseudo Widow, stuff like that that you want to stick in the active, like Bravery Charms, Sting, Technical Machine,
Mm.
Devolutions, also leaving Artisan to set up your Pokemon. So there's a couple
Yeah.
things that are leaving in this deck, but I think can definitely be replaceable in some aspects.
Yeah, the Bravery Charm and TM Devo actually might be the biggest hits for the deck in weird ways because it's like
Yeah.
they're effects that don't have replacements right now. And
Mhm.
that might be a little funky, but still an interesting option for people looking to test the waters with this deck after rotation.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
Jake, speaking of rotation, shall we get into our long overdue rotation discussion?
Mhm. Yes.
So I have pulled together a lot of thoughts to discuss, and we're going to start with, in my opinion, what the biggest archetypes rotating are. Now, this isn't to say that there are other decks that also rotate. This is me thinking about like what's been popular in the meta, what type of deck has the potential to either change a meta or break something or gatekeep. And so I put these 5 up here. So for the listeners that aren't seeing what I'm having on screen, the 5 archetypes leaving the meta that I think will have the biggest impact are Gardevoir, no surprise, Charizard, Goldengo EX. I think those are the big 3. But the other 2 that I think worth mentioning are we are losing Roaring Moon EX. So, with Dark getting certain support every now and again, having a one-shotter, it's not nothing. And Iron Hands EX, Amp You Very Much is rotating, which I would also say like hasn't been super popular lately, but between Joltik Box and all these other decks over time, can be a bit of a gatekeeping deck for single prizers. So
Yeah, I mean, Iron Hands EX, if you're able to power it up, has been such a menace for these like decks that have either these evolutions that they go into with these small baby Pokemon or maybe one prize decks, right? Being gate kept by this. So it's going to be interesting to see those two leave, even though they haven't been as impactful as of late.
yeah. So I think that in terms of an archetype perspective, what's other than Charizard EX, I am trying to think about big one-shot potential decks. And I'm not this
Mhm.
Charizard, Mega Charizard EX is what I'm thinking about. Um, what other one-shot potential decks are really out there at this point?
You want to know what I'm going to say?
Zoro? What? What?
Alakazam.
I mean, this is true. If you have,
Alakazam is a one-shot deck.
that's true. It is a one-shot deck. It is a very, it's a challenge to one-shot certain things, but it is a one-shot deck. That's very true.
Yeah, especially like and I think I mentioned this last week, but I've been listening into a lot of people's post-rotation discussions on like YouTube videos and things like that, and everybody is really high on Alakazam as like a top 3, maybe like bottom top 3 or like middle ground top 5 kind of deck,
I mean, hey, I'm both
which I'm all
excited.
in for.
I'm excited, but also scared because the
Mhm.
second that deck becomes a true top 5, top 3 deck is the second people start putting in Hand Trimmer or Zerosix, machinations. And I don't know how it recovers from that. I'm gonna be
I will
blunt.
say also, you have different things like other one-shot decks, like potentially Mega Lucario EX, right? Being able to add damage with stuff like Premium Power Pro and stuff of the sort, Maximum Belt as well on top of that, like as a potential ace spec. You
I think
can
the End
reach, like,
Zoroark.
specific numbers for that.
I think End Zoroark with Binding Mochi and
Yeah.
like the Petulant and like Black Belt's training with the Zekrom, the new Zekrom. I think that's a
Mhm.
pretty decent, mostly one shot deck as well. But
Yeah.
uh, you know, Roaring Moon and Goldengo though, I think were some of the most reliable one shot archetypes out there because the whole point was to
I
one
mean
shot, and
yeah, I
you
mean,
didn't
Frenzy
need
and Gouging was
yeah
a guaranteed one shot no matter
yeah.
what.
So, I think we're losing those. And then the extra prize cards from Iron Hands is another archetype that is sort of leaving that doesn't have a replacement. And I'm not counting the Exodia combo of N, the N's package,
Mhm.
the new supporter we got. That does not count. But I think that the Iron Hands leaving is a good thing. I extra prize cards on attacks have never been things that typically go over well with the community. And the only card I can remember personally like not having super negative thoughts about is Metacham V. Because like, yes, you got to like take an extra turn, which is kind of like an extra prize, if you sort of think about it. But the requirements was that you had to put 2 damage counters to do it. So it's like, it's a little bit of work,
You
Takes
had
some
to have,
time.
like, specific numbers to set up in order to make that happen, and it
Yeah,
wasn't something that you could pull off every single game.
exactly. So, Jake, are you going to miss any of these archetypes?
To be honest, no. Even though I played a lot of Gardevoir, primarily in its 3 years or whatever that was in the standard format, pretty much since, like, day 1 to since I got Alakazam built together with Pokepads, essentially. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I miss it, just simply because, like, it's done its time, right? I mean, we've talked about again and again, people have griped about it so much about how they wish it could die, like to stop being in the format. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have the same gripe as those people, but I am I am fulfilled with seeing enough of Goldango, Charizard, and Gardevoir as decks in the format, and I'm ready for the refresh. Right? It was a good run.
That's fair. I think when people look back on Gardevoir EX, I think that its legacy, I mean, it was a great deck. I think that its legacy, if
Yeah.
people don't like it, will always be tainted by Monkey Dory. Because the
Yes.
Gardevoir, it's an engine. It's a great engine, super strong. I think the Monkey is really what made it annoying to play against for people because it just felt like this putting 2 damage counters was no longer a drawback to the engine,
Hmm.
but in fact it was a necessary like component. It was like it was a buff to the engine that you get to put damage counters on. Weirdly, if they made Gardevoir EX not put any damage counters on, I think the deck would have been worse because you
Yes.
couldn't monkey. So I think that when you really think about it, that deck will be thought negatively mostly because of its ancillary partner, not because of what it was personally what itself was designed to do. But
Yeah, I mean, Monkey Dory, if you look at Gardevoir's attack doing 190 for the 3 energies, if you use the I almost said leader effect.
if you use the
That's how
leader
much One
effect
Piece
of
I've
Monkey
been
Door,
thinking about. Especially with all the casting of, like, One Piece. I'm
yeah,
still One Piece coded in a sense, but anyways, if you use the Pokemon's ability to accelerate all 3 of those energies on that Pokemon, that's 6 damage counters, but then you have 2 Monkey Dories remove those damage counters, your 190 damage attack is really doing, like, 250.
yeah,
So, Monkey Dory, to ride on the back of what you're talking about of how these damage counters that you put on through Gardevoir EX's ability don't really have a drawback. It truly was Monkey Dory that broke it because it made the attacks that much stronger in a sense because you like did a workaround of like adding more damage per those attacks. So yeah, I mean, I think Monkey Dory absolutely broke the deck. I mean, there's a reason that Henry Chow has done multiple regionals with 4 of them in the Gardevoir deck.
yeah. And also to note, Henry Chow's deck this last weekend, no Jellicent EX, only one
Yeah,
Frillish. So
yeah.
who needs item lock? Um, Anyways, that's I think enough talk about the archetypes. Now let's get into like the individual cards, some support Pokemon to start with. So this next page is a few support Pokemon. We have, I think, 2 pages of these. They're in no particular order. They're in whatever order I sort of found, referenced, thought of them. So, but just going down the list, and then we'll talk about them. We have Baxcalibur rotating. We have Brute Bonnet rotating. We have Ditto with Transformative Start rotating. Klefki is rotating. Toadscruel, the no cards getting put back into your hand ability one, is rotating. And then finally, we have, I think, the lesser cousin of Gardevoir in Xatu on this page.
Mm-hmm.
It never really saw its time in the sun because Gardevoir and it had the same regulation mark for some reason. I don't know why they did. Anyways.
It's really interesting, like, looking at this list and thinking about, like, Baxcalibur. So, like, I
Yeah.
played a fair amount of Chin Pao EX as well when that first came out. I think it was like, before I moved or right when I moved to Vegas, because I think these EXs were coming out, like, right when I moved to
Mm-hmm.
Vegas, because it's been about 3 years now that I've lived in Vegas. But anyways, it's really curious to see how, like, Chin Pao Baxcalibur was so good in the format for such a long time, but then now we get to the end of the regulation and it's about to rotate, and it's obsolete now. Brute Bonnet could be the same way with, like, Roaring Moon EX, right? Where it was good for a while. Roaring Moon EX was a pretty good deck, especially with, like, different, modifiers and things like that, but it just moved away from the format. But I think Toadscruel definitely hurting, but Ditto was kind of my favorite to move out of this group of 6 Pokemon that we're talking about in the support category. Because I think Ditto, just being able to switch itself with a basic Pokemon from your deck is so cool, like deck building wise,
Mm-hmm.
and with some flexibility, especially with that first turn condition.
There's a part of me that thinks that we are due for another really good Ditto, though, because between Pokemon Pokopia, which, if you haven't played it and you don't know anything about it, you play as a Ditto. Between that and the fact that this Ditto is rotating, and Ditto usually has really cool game building abilities. I
Yeah,
know you'll always think back to Prism Star Ditto.
it's my
Um,
favorite. I miss her every day.
there's a part of me that thinks that we might get another Ditto at some point soon, just because of the popularity of Pokopia. And if they want it to be relevant, maybe we'll get a cool effect like this again in the next 6 months to a year.
And just to bring a side tangent, if you don't know Pokopia, it's basically like an Animal Crossing kind of game, but I mean, it's so much more. My girlfriend has got Pokopia, and I haven't been able to play the Switch 2 in the last couple weeks because she has absolutely loved it. Like pregame, postgame, she's probably put like 100 hours into Pokopia because it's that good. Like if you're a fan of the Stardew Valleys or Animal Crossing or stuff like that, you'll get everything that you want out of this game. And with that popularity, I do agree it could be really cool to get some sort of like really cool Ditto in the format, especially maybe even as promos,
Yeah.
right? In collaboration. Like we had the Pokemon Go set, and there's also like I saw somebody make a mock image or like a mock card of this. I can't remember where I saw it get posted, but there's a professor in the Pokopia game and it's a
Mm.
Tangrowth. Tangrowth acts as a professor, so somebody mocked up like a professor's research with Tangrowth. And I think you could do like some really cool stuff in collaboration with the Pokopia game. So yeah, I want to anyways, tangent over.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, of these 6 though, I think for me the biggest one that we're losing is actually weirdly Klefki of the 6 on this page. The Klefki, if you don't know, has Mischievous Lock is the ability. If it's in the active spot, basic Pokemon have no abilities except for Mischievous Lock. The reason that this one matters is because it is a very important card in Dusknoir builds. Because if you are playing a Dusknoir build and your opponent has one of the Psyducks down, all you have to do is get this Klefki into the active. You turn off that Psyduck that has I think it's called Damp
Yeah.
ability. And all of a sudden, your Dusknoirs can blow them all up now because they're not basic. Uh, I I actually think this is probably a very healthy thing because the Psyduck they really need and want the Psyduck to be relevant and playable. And so forcing your opponent to have to like boss it up or whatever, take a turn knocking it out, uh, or not, or who knows, but like basically get rid of it the good old fashioned way, and then they can use their
Mhm.
Dust Noirs. But I do want to call that out as like a big opportunity space for decks that struggle with Dust Noir.
Yeah. I think Klefki is really interesting too, especially when you turn off stuff like Pheasantipity as well, or other basic Pokemon, right? We're getting, we'll talk about this later, Meowth EX, which okay, another tangent. At the pre-release that I did, someone that I know in their pre-release kit, so the 4 packs, opened up 2 Meowths and then opened up 2 more Meowths in their pack per round played. So in 7 packs, opened up 4 Meowths. And I'm like,
That's
okay, I didn't even get an EX. Like, what? But anyways, okay, side tangent over. But yeah, so like we're getting stuff in the game as well that like Klefki could lock outside of just that Psyduck, but it's really interesting, yeah.
yeah. Next page of support Pokemon. These are the only other 6 that I thought were particularly relevant. There are many
These
support
are some
Pokemon.
other yeah, I like
Yeah.
this group of 6 a little bit more, and I'm gonna miss this group of 6 a little bit more.
So this group of 6, the first one is Halucha with that flying entry ability. Dragapult uses it and loves it. I'm personally happy to see it go because Dragapult has enough toys. I need them to
Yeah.
not be able to easily hit 70 damage on my bench. So sayonara. Squawkabilly EX is an interesting one. That one has the ability that during your first turn, you can, if you play this, actually not if you play this, at any point during your first turn, which is kind of an interesting like delay effect. But you can discard
Mhm.
your hand and draw 6, and you can only use it once. I think this one was like interesting. It saw some play. It kind of the play fell off a bit, so I was kind of surprised at like this one not being as popular as maybe like a Dedenne.
Well,
But the first turn, yeah,
yeah, Squawkabilly had this interaction that because of that turn or because of that ability Squawk and Seas where you could only use it on the first turn, really only opened it up to specific like aggro self-mill kind of decks like Cerulege, right? That wants to build up the discard pile with so many different cards. And so it was really nice. It wasn't like overused like Dedenne. I'm glad it wasn't like Dedenne. I'm super glad that this card was so ultra specific to the format of what kind of play style that it wanted to be in. And I was really happy about this card in its tenure. This is probably one of the ones that I'm gonna miss the most.
yeah. I mean, look, if you want to build a super aggro deck in expanded,
Hmm.
I think playing Squawkabilly will be a lot of fun
Actually,
because,
no, I think it's bad.
well, I mean, if you
I don't
really
know if
want to
you
go
played
through
it in
your deck,
expanded.
nobody plays
Do
it
you
because
play
you have
this
the
in
Dedenne
expanded?
and Crobat and all these other things. But
Yeah.
like, I think Shaman is banned now, right? Shaman EX in expanded.
No, Scoop Up Net is
Scoop Up Net is
banned.
okay. I didn't know if Shaman also got the ban.
Actually, I don't know that for sure. It might be that both of them are, but I know at least Scoop Up Ban is definitely banned
Yes,
because it worked
yes.
with Shaman EX.
But anywho, the Squawkabilly was cool. I do have the SIR for this one, and it is
Mhm.
cute.
I do too.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those where like if you are looking for the cheaper end SIR cards from like early Scarlet Violet, Squawkabilly is a good one. And then the next card also, the Miraidon EX, also kind of a cool SIR. But yeah, we're losing
Yeah.
Miraidon, the I think poster child of electric decks, of lightning type decks for the last 3 years. Um, it basically made it so like it didn't matter what items were or weren't in format. If you find one of these turn one, you're good. You're fine. Um,
It was really interesting to see this card's evolution too from like, to a strict Miraidon deck and like Jesse Parker placing really high at Worlds, that one year with Miraidon, the big believer of Miraidon, but then kind of like in the tail end of its legacy, being more of like just a one of or two of in something like Joltik box to set up the Iron Hands or Pikachu EX or something like that. So kind of going from like the staple Pokemon that you needed to more of a support Pokemon option that you've got in this category, right? But it
Yeah.
does have definitely a support function as an ability.
These last three, Mew EX, Pidgeot EX, and then I'll throw an Iron Bundle here just because it's one of them. But I think the first two, Mew and Pidgeot, losing those two, I think is a pretty one of the biggest deals of all the ones we've talked about. I mean, Mew, it didn't necessarily get played in every deck, but it is a strong card. And I think, post Lily's Clefairy, that genome hacking attack in Gardevoir was like really strong. So I think that's going to be a big miss. And then Pidgeot, there were just so many
Pidgeot's gonna
decks.
hurt.
Yeah, Pidgeot's definitely going to hurt. It hurts all of those cool Dawn builds that we like seeing that were like, I'll go get a Noctowl and a Pidgeot and some basic. And then I'm going to rare candy into the Pidgeot to go find with this. And I'll Noctowl it. It was a pretty cool combo. I'm glad that combo didn't exist for too long because it probably would have gotten broken and annoying. But we're losing quick search, and it may be another 10, 15 years before we see this again.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to Pidgeot EX because I remember when this card got first revealed that it was being printed because this is well, it's a callback to a
It's an
very
old
old
ability.
Pidgeot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quick search is a ability that it's been on Pidgeot before and was actually really, really relevant in the meta. I think it was in like 2007, 2006, 2009, somewhere in that time frame. But a lot of people, when this first got revealed before it came out, were like, all the times have changed. This card sucks. Like, it's not very good. Like, and I think even we were not overly high on this card. I think we were like, this could be very nice in some specific decks, right? But it is a stage two. And at that time, stage twos were not really that good, right? To set up a stage two was very hard. But then as time went on, is an immediate pair with Charizard as a buddy to be able to get that synergy of those evolutions out onto the field. Pidgeot Control was a nice archetype that like All Out Blitzel was very good with, and a couple other players like Sander and stuff like that. So like Pidgeot was really good in this format, and I think especially with all the doubt that was with Pidgeot EX at the beginning, I think this is the card that I'm actually going to miss the most because I think this enabled like so many different things and so many strategies because again, like that quick search, like you said, just grabbing any card was awesome.
Yeah. Then I'll give a little honorable mention to Iron Bundle. I think it was a very weirdly used card. I've always liked this ability though. And I will also note, we'll get to it in a second, but we are losing Counter Catcher. So our gusting options are becoming much more limited as we enter post rotation. So between Counter Catcher and Iron Bundle leaving, giving you only things like Boss or
Prime
Rhyme.
Catcher.
I don't know how many people, or Prime Catcher, I suppose. Yeah. But there's a lot less manipulatable gusting. And that does, however, make me feel like maybe we'll be getting an escape rope at some point again. We might be in that era.
Escape rope has been rotated
For at least a year. It rotated, I think, alongside, or maybe right before, whatever. I think it rotated around the time that Lost Zone box rotated.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
But we've Escape Rope is one of those cards that comes in and out of the format, and so I could see, now that Iron Bundle and Counter Catcher is gone, maybe we'll get a more random, sort of random, like a choiceful gust effect in Escape Rope back.
Yeah, I definitely think, I don't know if it'll be escape rope exactly, because I think maybe they'll wait another year before they do that. But I do agree that like with a lot of these gust options rotating, and we're left with really only like boss's orders, which by the way is not rotating.
True.
Which I have strong feelings about. But yeah, like I think they'll do some other kind in the near future. Maybe even with Chaos Rising Ninja Spinner. They'll print like some sort of like gust kind of option, even if it's super niche like Iron Bundle was.
Yeah. that is all the Pokemon that are I deemed worth talking about. Now we get into what
Mhm.
are probably some of the biggest things that because these things go in a lot of different decks and they enable things which are the trainers. So
Oh,
Jake, take us through the
first,
list. Oh yeah, yeah.
before I go into the list, I will go into the list because there's some very good trainers that are leaving. I don't think we said at the beginning of this, so I just want to say it before we get any further. Cards with the block icon G are
Yes.
rotating and won't be legal for the standard format. Starting on PTC, I said this earlier, but I'll say the dates again. Starting on PTCG Live later this week, March 26th, but in person at your local leagues, cups, challenges, regional, stuff like that, that will not become active until April 10th. So you got like 2 weeks or so, plus or minus some days until it happens in paper IRL. So just want to mention that because I forgot to say that at the beginning of this conversation. G block cards are rotating, and there are some that have updated G block icon, or that there are some that have updated icons like H or I or whatever. That are staying within the format that may have G icons like boss's orders, right?
Mhm.
Boss's orders continues to get grandfathered in because the new boss's orders, they keep giving new icons and stuff like that. So just want to note that real quick before we go any further.
Jake, do you want to walk us through the 6 supporters that I threw together that are leaving us?
Yeah, I'll save my favorite for last in terms of these supporters. So, Professor Sada's Vitality, if you're a big fan of like Raging Bolt and stuff, this card was the sauce for all of your ancient decks, right? I mean, it was pretty much just like Raging Bolt and maybe some other ancient, or actually Roaring Moon.
Yeah, there was a baby
Roaring
Roaring
Moon
Moon
like this
and a
card.
Roaring Moon EX, yeah, that like this card.
Yeah,
But yeah.
they like this, but yeah, I mean, just losing out on that energy acceleration and draw just hurts.
Yeah, there's not really a replacement for this. I think people are trying to play Raging Bolt after rotation, and it's possible with Crispin, but it's
And just the Teal Mask Ogre Pawns,
yeah,
right, that
honestly,
you
like if
already
you're
had.
thinking of playing Raging Bolt afterwards, that's kind of what your engine has to be is Teal Mask Ogre Pawn Crispin.
Mhm.
And take it or leave it. So, but
Which works out in some situations, but some other cards, some removing Pokemon off the field, right? We had which was actually relevant in the regional this weekend, Professor Turo, Scenario, and Penny, which were good options against like some lock play styles, right? Like Evital or Ethan Pseudo, right? That we talked about in some of the decks. Being able to pick up either a basic Pokemon or a just any Pokemon in play with either of those two supporters. So those leaving format kind of stinks as some like pseudo moving, especially when you start the game with Blood Moon Ursaluna in the active and you can't retreat it.
yeah, that's gonna be rough. It'll definitely make people think twice about putting these one of chonkers in their deck to be like, well, and I think it makes decks that have Eveltal, Ethan Sudowoodo, like in theory, those decks become a little stronger. So I wonder if we'll start seeing people play one or two more copies of things like Switch in their deck.
Mhm.
Because yeah, there's not really much in the way of playing around this in the format. Weirdly enough, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think if there's really anything, but maybe there's some random supporter I'm forgetting, but not really.
Yeah, well, the thing is that these super viable options that have been the way to do it, if there are ones that have existed, they've just not been played because these are strictly better,
Yeah.
right? Which is the big key thing. Arvin is leaving the format too. Arvin, very good, especially in combination with something like Secret Box, right? That has been one of the reasons why Secret Box has been on the huge decline post rotation in Japan. Just being able to find an item and a tool card has been so good for the consistency of so many decks, right? Making sure that you've got a TM evolution, right, that you can quickly find that I played a bit in Gardevoir, Buddy Buddy Poffins, which are so impactful right now, right? Being able to make sure that you get some basic Pokemon on the bench. So Arvin leaving format is definitely going to be a sting, I will say. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. I think Arvin probably, honestly, uh, might have been one of the best cards of this era that
Yeah.
is not Like nobody looks at this card and immediately thinks to themselves, "Oh, that card is broken." But given that we had TM Evo and Secret Box and other ace specs in the format that were legal, like when you combine those two things, like this Arvin is like crazy. The fact that the
Yeah, I mean, this
replacement for this card
Arvin,
is petrol, basically, is
yeah.
nuts.
The This Arvin enabled so many different things, I feel like, in the format and so many different strategies. And what's crazy too is he got reprinted like 17 times. He was in like 7 sets, 7 to 10 sets. I wouldn't be surprised if it was double digit sets, but he never got an updated block icon number, which was crazy.
Jake, last two supporters.
The last two, I'm going to talk about Iono first, right? Iono, we've had in the series of the last couple years hand control, right? Especially as the game goes on, drawing the amount of cards that you have prizes left. And Iono was the latest version of Marnie was the latest version of N, right? To be able to do that, shuffling each player's hand and drawing the amount could be great if you're falling behind in a game because you can draw a lot of cards, up to 6 of them, and maybe in a situation where you can stall your opponent, maybe letting them only draw 1 card or 2 cards off of this Iono. So this one, I think, is going to be one that I'll I think people are going to be like not necessarily like good riddance that it's gone, but it's one of those things like I personally feel with Gardevoir and Charizard where I'm like and Goldango where I'm like, okay, I've had enough of Iono in this format. It's had its time, it's had its run. It was a good run while it lasted, but now it's time to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that people hate this the way that they hated Marnie, to be honest. And I
Yeah.
think that has largely to do with the fact that they printed Fez not that long after. So
Yeah.
it's like yeah, you can Iono me, but unless you also knock out my Pheasantipity EX, I'm gonna go
Yeah,
right back up to however many cards. So
there was a lot of statements of Iono is a lie because you just draw out of it, right? Because Pokemon
yeah,
has one of the most aggressive draws of any trading card game that I've ever played, right? Comparing to potentially White Schwartz if you've ever played that.
yeah. So I think that's
Which
probably
is
the reason that this is thought of as less oppressive than Marnie, even
mhm,
though the card as it's written is more oppressive than Marnie late game. Uh,
mhm.
you just have an option to get out of it more easily. So
And my favorite one that I am definitely going to miss within this format, Professor's Research, right? Just being able to discard your hand, draw 7. This is an effect that has been in the game for a while in the past formats and things of that nature. And I'm not 100% sure if I truly think that it should be a staple within the format, similar to other cards, but I definitely like having research as an option. Not every deck plays it, right? Even though it's around and it's a super strong effect. Discarding your hand and drawing 7 sometimes in some decks that have that want to have access to their resources at all times, right? Does not want to just blindly throw them away. Uh is something that it doesn't make it super, super relevant. It's kind of like because cards like Squawkabilly EX, right, are rotating and they're not staying within the format to, like I said earlier, enable those like hyper aggressive strategies. I still want those hyper aggressive strategies to exist if it makes sense within the game. So that's why I want Professor's Research to kind of like stick around in a sense because I want, and who knows, maybe they'll print more or other options, things like that. But yeah,
it's
I'm gonna
interesting.
miss that the most.
This one and Boss's Orders are two cards that when they first introduced them, I think there was Sword and Shield base.
Yeah,
When they first introduced them, they gave them this new sort of naming convention of Professor's Research, Boss's Order, and then you could print different, professors or villains as like the art.
yeah.
And I think it made us think the fact that they also carried on into Scarlet Violet, it made us think, oh, maybe the Pokemon Company has decided that this card is like Switch, is like Rare Candy, is like Judge, kind of like a card that seemingly is always in format. So it is weird seeing it rotate. I hope it opens up some.
Especially because Boss's Orders is sticking around to add to the gripe that I have on that card. Like if research is rotating,
You know, I wonder if it was something where the designers were making cards for sets, right? They'd planned on letting research and boss go, but then when they were actually designing the cards for like some set and they approved it and sent things to print, they realized that they didn't have a replacement for boss, that they
Mhm.
hadn't designed a replacement card. Because research, Lily's Determination is the clear replacement for this, right? In terms of like refreshing your hand, right? It's not the same effect, but it like, in the spirit of the game, it's not that
Yeah,
crazy. But
yeah.
boss is a very specific effect, and there is really no other effect now. And the fact that they reprinted boss as part of the Start Deck 100 series, I think, and not into a proper set, there's a part of me, Jake, that thinks that someone at Creatures was like planning on it rotating, didn't make a new version as a supporter, like a Guzma reprint or something, and was like, oh crap, put it in the Start Deck 100, give it a new thing, and then we'll deal with it next year.
Well,
Conspiracy
yeah, I mean,
theory,
it's just
but
well, it's one of those things too that um like boss's orders effect is so costly, right? Because that means you're not getting any draw. That means that you're not getting any Pokemon setup. Um but it's just like with a card like Meowth EX. That's why I don't not a huge fan. But anyways, we'll get more into that later. But yeah, those are the 6 big trainer cards I feel like. And like we said with the Pokemon, the support Pokemon, there's plenty more.
yeah.
And the archetypes that are rotating. We could spend 5 hours talking about all the cards that are rotating in the last 2 raw if we wanted to, but we've got stuff to do today. So let's move on into just the regular trainers, especially like item cards, Sean, that are rotating. We already hinted at Counter Catcher as a form of gust that's leaving the format. Counter Catcher, basically an unconditional gust when you are behind on prizes, especially if you can manipulate the prize trade in a sense with stuff like Dusknor. Counter Catcher was very, very good. Or like run behind on prizes for a majority of the game to then go in at the very end and be ahead on prizes and win. Counter Catcher was pretty good, and I really like this card in format, but it's time for
Yeah.
it to go.
Yeah, I think this one, I think it's fair that it's going. We'll get other cards in the future that, you know, maybe give us a similar effect. It's very strong. Um, there's a few other cards here though that are pretty impactful. Earthen Vessel is rotating. I think this is one card that at least it wasn't on my radar as like this card is rotating, and I'm like, oh, actually that's kind of crazy because you're like, well, how do I go get energy out of my deck then if I want a specific one? Well, Energy Search is also rotating, which is like a not as good Earthen Vessel. It gets you 1 energy, 1 basic. And so now you're sitting here thinking, Jake, well, I guess, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but like you're left with like Hilda and Colress Tenacity, I think, as your main energy searches. And I think I have it later in the, yeah, we'll talk about it in a bit. But like to me, that was a big weird one of like, oh, yeah, it's going to be really hard to find my dark energy if I'm playing Monkey Dory plus some other energy type. Like I have to play Crispin
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
I mean, Earthen Vessel enabled so many different things, not only because like you were able to find energies, but you could also set up your discard pile, right? Whether that was Gardevoir that wanted the psychic energies in the discard pile, or even like Raging Bull, right? With combination of Professor Sada's vitality or anything of the sort, right? Like so it was a pretty good like setup card. So having that leave energy search, I have some beef with of why this is rotating. I think this should be part of the trainers
Mm,
like Switch and stuff that does not rotate because it's just searching for a basic energy. Like it is a very simple card that you probably
yeah.
always maybe want to put in stuff like pre-release kits and beginner options, right? Like it's league battle decks, stuff like that. So why is this card rotating? Anyways, I'll digress.
I no no it's an interesting thought. There's a part of me that maybe the designers are looking at how people construct decks and seeing how few energy are in decks. I don't know if they want to encourage people to put more energy into the decks and have that result in a slightly more random gameplay experience because you can get like flooded with energy. Um, but my assumption was they did this to fix a problem of the design of the game, which is you need energy in your hand, and nobody
Mhm.
wants to play 20 energy in their deck. If you've ever played like a really basic starter deck on TCG Live or like from like 5 or 10 years ago, you will know that if you have 20 energy, that sucks. That sucks in most decks. So
Yeah.
I, you know, I think they're going to need to reprint some effect like this as an item card soon.
Mhm.
Uh,
And so that is gonna be leaving superior energy retrieval, also leaving in, with Goldango leaving and whatnot, and Chin Pao and stuff like that, or Bax Caliber, I should say. Superior energy retrieval leaving, being able to grab 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile. Again, like, helped out so many different decks. You had to trash 2 cards from hand to do it, so it was pretty costly. This is a memorable card in a lot of situations. I'll miss this one.
yeah. Uh, Super Rod and Palpad, though, are another two that were not on my radar that I'm like, oh, Super Rod? You don't think about it, but most decks, a lot of decks play one Super Rod. And now you will have to do either more night stretchers or some other weird combination of things. So I think that's a little impactful. Palpad is going to be really impactful, I think,
Yeah.
especially if you're like a Xander type that wants to play control. Palpad is a critical piece of those decks usually because there's always one or two weird supporters that are not good until you get your lock in. And then you really want to get those going like 4 or 5 times in a row. So Palpad rotating, I think, will have a much bigger impact than people might initially think.
Especially because we are getting ready to go into a format where finding one of supporters is pretty easy,
Hmm.
right? On the back of stuff like Meowth EX, which we'll talk about. I keep saying we're going to talk about it here soon, and I promise we will. But so Palpad going away is I'm like kind of cool with, right? Because if you have a one of right in your deck that you go and use because of like Meowth EX, I want to I don't know how I feel exactly about like putting it back into your deck. It kind of limits those one ofs to makes you think of like, oh, maybe I should put it as a two of then, if it's something that I might want to use multiple times in a game if it's that important, right? It's not like the versus seeker formats where you really only ran one supporter of each type, maybe two, because you could always call that back in a sense. So this kind of limits that callback in that play style. So I'm okay with Palpad moving. But Super Rod, I feel like, is one of those with the Pokemon and energy recovery that there has to be some sort of Super Rod, whether that's Lana's fishing rod, an older card that was in the game for a little bit, something of that sort. I guess we'll talk about some of their key cards that can fit alongside Super Rod, but I like Super Rod being in format. So seeing this go also hurts.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those weird cards that like it's not the most powerful card in the game by any means, but it's a really good utility card that like you don't realize till it's gone what you had.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Last little set of trainers here. We won't spend too much time because I'm realizing we're talking. This is a long one, but
Yeah.
we have Bravery Charm going. I think this will be really a pretty big deal for the Mega Kangaskhan decks. You do not get quite as chunky, but also the certain like single prize decks that really relied on that single prizer being just out of range of other single prizers. So that's a big one. All the TMs are leaving Jake.
I
That's
really liked the TMs as we got through the format. They all had their place in different various situations, right? Evolution and devolution, very good in different decks like Gardevoir and stuff like that. We talked about earlier. Frostlass Monkey Dory, loving the devolution card, and then even Turbo Energize, even though not necessarily as impactful, I feel like in the meta long term. as evolution and devolution really came in at the end with stuff like the Mega Absol Kangaskhan deck.
Yeah.
So those big shout outs to those because they were cool.
There is one TM staying. I looked this up,
Oh
Jake, and
yeah,
it is TM fluorite. If you don't know what that
what does
does,
that do?
I don't
Yeah.
remember, and I don't blame you. It's like about, I think it heals all the damage from all of your, something like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's not played for a reason. It requires like also 3 weird energies. Anyways, point being, there is still one out there if you really liked TM Machine and you're like, but what can TM Machine find? Well, you got one option. And then the last two I think are pretty big deals. You mentioned, I think it earlier, Artisan is rotating.
Hmm.
Pretty big card for a lot of these stage 2 decks to run, just alternate ways to find their basics. And Nest Ball. So between Artisan and Nest Ball rotating, you know, you do lose with Nest Ball the option to find some of the other EXs. So for basic EXs, it's going to be a really weird time.
Yeah.
Basic non-Terra EX. It's very specific, but those decks are going to be weird.
Yeah, I mean, Nest Ball leaving the format hurts, but typically we have only like one kinds of these um ball search cards or whatever that come in. Like we had level ball previously to find those small Pokemon, things like that. That rotated out a couple years ago, but so Nest Ball, it'll come back probably sometime in the next 5 years, I would assume. But yeah, that one leaving the format is tough.
Last little thing of what's leaving are 3 energy cards. I'll start from right and go backwards. Jet Energy is rotating. Pretty cool card. I think, it's always been up and down usage wise, but decks like Megalopony, I think, are hurting quite a lot losing that card. Luminous Energy, weirdly, I think, really hurts things like Dragapult. So
Hmm.
if anything is giving Dragapult more of a hard time, between losing Klefki and losing Luminous Energy, I think that's what we need to keep Dragapult in check a little bit, just a little. And then finally, Reversal Energy is leaving, which, another card that we would only see from time to time. But I do want to point out, Jake, that there were 3 cards that the designers pointed to when the Scarlet Violet era kicked off. And they talked about this era of Pokemon being all about comeback mechanics. And I do think in many ways they achieved their goal. Like the last few years, decks that go behind in prizes and then come back at the end to win. And I'm thinking about Gardevoir, Dragapult, like so many decks. The 3 cards I'm talking about are Reversal Energy, Counter Catcher, and Iono. And with those 3 cards rotating, I do think to myself, I think we are fully leaving the era of comebacks. And I wonder what
Yeah.
that's going to mean for the meta and the format as a whole.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well. I don't really have strong feelings about these 3 energies. I think, as you're saying, like they're cool, but some of them were kind of specific. Jet Energy is probably the strongest one that I have, but all in all, that's all right.
But we've told you what's leaving. We're going to go through now what some of the alternatives might be for different effects. So, Jake, if you're looking for Pokemon, knowing what we've lost, what options are available to you that you maybe don't think about all the time?
I think Serrano, especially for all these different EX decks that you worry about now, because EX is still being printed, right, are still pretty good. Being able to find those EXs, because even the Megas are EXs, right? You can find those with Serrano to get 3 of them. Could be really nice, just as a one of, right, that we've seen in like Zoroark or something like that. I think Zoroark runs a couple more of these, but like could just be like a more limited one that you try to play one time in a game to just find those Pokemon to evolve right away or play them out onto the field like Pheasantipity, things of that nature. And then Mega Signal, right? Especially with the emphasis of Megas coming in. It's not necessarily like overly playable, I think, or that a lot of people play it in a sense, but it is going to be an option that some people think about, right, as there are megas that are being printed. that maybe like I mean Cherish Ball was so good when we had the GXs in like the 2019 when Unified Minds came out.
Yeah.
Was big in something like Mewtwo Mew. So who knows? Maybe there's a mega evolution like search engine that we really need to find, and this is a way to just find those mega EXs.
Yeah, if we ever get another Reggie Drago Mewtwo and Mew GX like attack
Mm.
that copies specifically mega Pokemon of any kind, I do think that the stonks on this also go through the roof because this puts it into your hand and not onto the field. And that was
Yeah.
like a key aspect of certain of those style of decks. So I have no idea if they're going to print something like that, but like all I'm saying is Mega Mewtwo has not been revealed yet. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll get a
We
Mega
know that guy's
Mewtwo.
coming.
Right,
Yeah, we
exactly.
know that that guy's gonna come sometime.
Um, next category, because we are losing Iono. The question is, okay, well, if I need to disrupt my opponent's hand, what are my options? And we've talked about one at length, which is Unfair Stamp. I think this is the
Mm.
ace spec of choice post rotation for most decks. So get your copies sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
But
if you haven't gotten them yet, when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, we're in the Champions League. It was like 8 of the top 16 or something like that was or no, I think it was higher than that.
it was like
It
12
was
or
like 10 of
13. It was a
the
lot.
yeah, 12, 13 of the top 16 was Unfair Stamp. Like, if you haven't gotten these yet, get them now.
Yeah. Now we are, I will say, we are getting a Chaos Rising red card that
Mhm.
also does some manipulation of the hand, but there will be a window of time where you don't have a good option. But the other two is either Judge, which is, you know, it's a staple, right? It's one of those cards that's been around forever. It does what it says on the tin. Both players shuffle their hand and draw four. It's not bad. I also want to point out though Harlequin. I know Jake Boss or Jake MT. No, Jake Gearhart. I think is
Yeah, Jake
mixing up with a
Gearhart.
bunch of people. Jake Gearhart went on a whole thing online about how Harlequin is mathematically better than Judge, and I have no clue right wrong. I mean, I'll trust the math there, but if you're thinking about playing Judge, also consider Harlequin. You shuffle your hand into your deck, your opponent does the same. Then you flip a coin. If it's heads, you draw five, your opponent draws three. Tails is vice versa. So he was saying mathematically, on average, your opponent will draw less than four cards, which I'm like, yeah, okay, interesting.
But it's a 50-50.
I mean, I
So
guess
isn't the average 4?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. He was just saying he did some math. I'm not an expert on the math, the statistics,
Okay.
but I'm just saying it's an option. If you think you're lucky and you want them to have one less card, play Harlequin. You know what? Just go
If
for
you
it.
like coin flips, yeah,
Yeah.
if you're a big coin flip fan, this is a great card for you. But yeah, I think Judge and Unfair Stamp definitely gonna be ones that people are gonna obviously play the most. Unfair Stamp being the most playable ace spec at this point.
Yeah. How about energy acceleration? We talked about, we're losing Gardevoir, we're losing
Mhm.
Baxcalibur. I want to get energy on my Pokemon, Jake. What do I do?
Especially when you have multiple different colors of energy and stuff like Dragapult and things like that. Crispin is going to be your big one, I think, specifically because you grab basic energy of different types with Crispin, and then you can attach one. So, I mean, even stuff like Flareon box, right? The EV box that has been running around in format for the last couple sets, still something that people are winning city leagues with. I almost said flagships. That's another One Piece term. City leagues, that's something that's still going on right now. And so Crispin is definitely going to be a form of energy acceleration if you've got those different colors of energies that you need to find. Also, like even in some Monkey Dory engines, right? If you're a deck that only really needs like for your main attackers one specific kind of energy, whether let's just say water for example, if you're just a water deck that only needs water energies for your attackers but you utilize Monkey Dory, right, this is another great way to be able to get your energies for Monkey Dory but also get energies on your attacker in a sense, right? So there's some cool synergies with this. And then Rose's encouragement, if you got this in your perfect order pre-release kits, especially if you're running a lot of stage 2 Pokemon and you're like a slow setup deck with these stage 2 Pokemon, Rosa could be a really cool option to be able to accelerate energies from that discard pile onto those stage 2s after you get behind on like Budoos or something like that or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Roses is interesting. I think it could be useful at some point in the future. We'll really have to see.
I see it
A
played in Dragapult in Japan
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, it is good
Mhm.
as a one of in Dragapult, especially again with Meowth. Uh,
Yeah.
one of the problems with Dragapult is if your opponent only has 2 energy on the field and they're attached to the same Dragapult, if you knock that Dragapult out and they're not playing either Crispin or the energy A spec, um, they just can't attack the following turn. So a Rose's encouragement is also really strong there. So um, very, very interesting there. I don't like how you have to be behind on prize cards. I'll just go out and
Yeah,
say that.
that's the biggest drawback and why I was talking about like either like Dusknoir decks you play this in or
Yeah.
like slow setup decks that use like Budu at the beginning and typically you just give up the first prize naturally.
Yeah. We mentioned we're losing research. So the question is, what do I play for just raw draw power? And one of them, Lily's Determination, we've talked about. I think it's a staple. A lot of decks are going to run this as a 3 or a 4 of. But another card
Mhm.
that I don't think people are necessarily as tuned into is Morty's Conviction. So if you don't know, you can use this only if you discard another card from your hand. Why would you ever want to discard a card? So you get to discard a card. I think that's a bonus. You get to discard a card, and then
Yeah.
you draw for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So I would say like 80% of the time that you play this card, you're going to just discard 1, draw 5. Sometimes it'll be less, but if you're playing against a Terra Box deck with a Area 0, heck, you might draw 8 cards. That's pretty
Mhm.
good.
Especially because Morty's Conviction can help filter out your hand as well, right? If there's a card that maybe you don't need specifically in a matchup that's kind of clogging up your hand, or maybe you need to set up your discard pile for various things, it could be a nice setup card on top of that. So I like keeping my eye on Morty's Conviction, right? There could be a situation because I think Morty has been in tops before of like regionals and stuff, mainly as a one of. But I think that could be said the same in a format like this.
I played around with this card in Alakazam as well. I don't think it's something you should write off. I think it's actually half decent in Alakazam, especially with Earthen Vessel rotating. You might want to get an energy into the discard early for a Wondrous Patch, and Morty's Conviction's a great way to do that. Draw a bunch of cards. There's your little tech tip right there. Maybe play a copy of this, 1 or 2 copies of this in your Alakazam deck. How about Energy Search, Jake? We briefly mentioned that earlier, but
You had talked about both of these cards in terms of energy search alternatives, Colress's Tenacity and Hilda. I see Hilda a lot in different decks, being able not only to find an evolution Pokemon where evolving is actually pretty impactful in this upcoming post rotation format. Like there's a lot of different evolution decks and finding any energy card, right? That can be accessed in Dragonpult as Neo Upper Energy. That can be like a special energy. Like I know in my Alakazam deck, I'm playing Hilda to be able to find I think it's called Telepathic Energy, the new psychic energy that's in perfect order, to be
yep.
able to attach it to my Alakazam and put out 2 basic Abras on the bench, which is pretty cool. So I think Hilda's going to be the big one that I think if you don't have, especially because it was only in Black Bolt White Flare, which is a specialty set, right? Which is short printed and probably not going to be printed too much anymore unless it gets reprinted somewhere, which it could happen. I think it was in the pre release kits in perfect order. I think some of the kits had Hilda in it. But anyways, you want to make sure that you have Hilda because I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. The other one is Colress Tenacity. It's a stadium and an energy. You know, I think you would really have to be hard pressed to want to play specific stadiums at specific times to play this. But you never know. Maybe they'll print some really crazy stadiums at some point that will be impactful. The one point I'll make with Colress Tenacity that you should keep an eye out, I believe, does Kiram rotate or no? The dragon
Curum,
Kiram.
like, it either probably rotates or it's not good enough to really be around. The
Well,
one
the
that, like,
reason
spreads the damage or whatever.
it does 110 to all your benched Pokemon for 1 energy if there's a Colress in the discard.
How do you spell Curum? Oh my gosh. But
Kyurem.
it was yeah. It was it's a block H from Shrouded Fables. So, okay,
I,
you can still play it.
I will mention that only to say if Colress Tenacity, if they ever print stadiums that you really want to find and you're thinking about Colress Tenacity, just know that Kiram will be waiting for you if that becomes a meta relevant supporter. So yeah, I don't know if it'll ever be worth it because a 110 to all of my Pokemon on the bench for 1 colorless energy seems gross.
What is the Slow King? Uh, is Slow King rotating? Because I know, like,
No.
in the Slow King deck from Stellar Crown, so it's got an H block that's existing. If you want to play Slow King, you definitely play this combo, right?
Yeah, that's a good call out. So I think Slow King stays around. So that's yeah, just reminding everyone of this terrible card that
Yeah.
was designed to kill Lost Box that now might inadvertently destroy everything else.
It's not an incredible deck, but if you want to have like a fun, viable deck, which we're big fans of the podcast, having fun rogue decks that, can do pretty okay. You can have a winning record at locals. Like that's definitely one of them. And I think there were actually like 1 or 2 Slow Kings that day two'd in Houston,
Doesn't surprise me. There's some
that
with
I heard
Pokepad.
from some noise.
I
Hmm.
think Slow King's another one of those decks that like Pokepad's existence is a huge buff to the deck. So
Yeah. Very,
um,
very cool.
moving into recovery, we mentioned Super Rod is rotating. What do you get instead? I mentioned this. We have Night Stretcher. You might want to play extra copies of that. Jake, you mentioned Lana's Aid. I think an awesome
Hmm.
alternate card here if you're willing to play your supporter for turn for it. Um, and then the last card that I want to give a shout out to because I think is pretty good, especially if you're running any kind of single prizer deck like Alakazam. Sacred
Yeah, I was
Ash.
gonna say it's in my Alakazam deck right
Yeah.
now.
You usually only need 1 copy of it, but because it's
Mhm.
5 Pokemon that you shuffle in, which is a lot. But great card. Great card in decks like that.
Yeah, especially like Night Stretcher. Night Stretcher is one of the best Pokemon recovery cards that we have right now, especially with its flexibility of either grabbing a Pokemon or a basic energy card from your discard pile. So definitely, if you don't have these or I think this was reprinted in Ascended Heroes. So it's not
Yep.
as crazy as it used to be because this is uh, formerly just a Shrouded Fable card, which was also a specialty set like Black Bolt, White Flare. So make sure to get your Night Stretchers if you don't have them.
Last sort of category here is deck search. We are losing Arvin, which I think is one of the best, and quick search, 2 of the best deck searching sort of combos that we've ever seen. But Jake, what do we have at our disposal otherwise?
You already talked about Team Rocket's Petrol, right? Team Rocket's Petrol being able to find any trainer card, reveal it, and put it in your hand is nice as like a 1-for-1. We've seen this kind of card be relevant in the format in the past because this is literally Skyla, right? Skyla was in format and did the exact same thing, finding a trainer card, except now instead of a lady, you've got a man with a really weird, creepy facial hair and head in Petrol. Anyways, so you got Petrol here being able to find trainer cards, but also finding trainer cards. You have Noctowl, right? If you're trying to run any sort of Terra Pokemon deck, whether that's, the Terra Pokemon are a support or like a tech option or whatever, Noctowl is really good for the engine to be able to find any sort of trainer cards. Can find 2 of them upon that evolution with the Jewel Seeker ability.
Also mentioned, Cypher Maniac's code breaking still exists. It's
I think Cypher Maniac's code breaking is actually more viable now post rotation for sure.
yes,
I see it
yeah,
in a lot
because
more decks.
well, because you've got, you still have Pheasantipity, right? So if it's post getting a knockout taken and you really need a couple of specific cards, it's a good supporter card as long as you don't need a supporter.
Mm.
But yeah, it's another really cool combo. Goldango I think was the deck that really abused it the most, but decks like Mega Kangaskhan, if they stay viable, I think are really gonna like Cypher Maniac's code breaking moving forward too.
I mean, we have a ton of different cards that just say draw 2 or
Oh, and
3
Zorark.
within the format, right? Yeah, Enzork is a big one with that trade ability, being able to just draw 2 cards. Even stuff like Dragapult, right? Cypher's Maniac code breaking could be a really cool one of in Dragapult because of that Drakloak ability, Recon Directive, to be able to just look at the top 2 and grab one of those cards, right? You can use that top 2 to be like a card that you want and then a card that you don't want, to make it very easy on the search to be able to put at the bottom of the deck. And then, like you said, Mega Kangaskhan is also a good one. There's even an idea of playing it in something like Alakazam, I think, because like with the ability of drawing cards, right? A Kadabra draws you 2 cards. A Dunsparce draws you 3 cards. The Enriching Energy draws you 4 cards, right? You could make it to where you can specifically put a couple cards on the top of the deck to maybe chain more evolutions or make sure that you can put Dunsparce's back on the bench, right? To be able to, maybe guard against like an unfair stamp of something like that. Just a really cool setup card. Even stuff like Teal Mask Ogrepon, right? Being able to draw 1 card off of the ability, you can make sure you guarantee that you get exactly what you want. Like we have so many different draw efforts in the format that I really, really like Cypher Maniac's code breaking.
Jake, I love this. You have like sold me more. I might have to pick up at least 1 or 2 copies of the alternate art for this because
I
you're right.
believe I have 2 copies. I have 2 copies of the alternate art because I played Goldango for a little bit. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's where
excellent.
I have them from. Yeah, excellent.
And we've talked about this a million times, but we're talking about like what we're losing. But in terms of what we are
Mhm.
getting, we are getting Meowth EX. It does have the ability Last Ditch Catch, which is effectively you play it from your hand onto your bench, then you can search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand. You can only do it once per turn, but why would you? I don't. It technically it
It's the
says
Luminion.
you can only
It's
use
a
one
Luminion
ability.
V reprint.
Weirdly, it has you may only use one ability with Last Ditch in its name, so that
Mhm.
when this was revealed, we actually talked about like, does that imply that they're going to have other Last Ditch cards? Um, but thus far, there's nothing. But yeah, it's basically Luminion. Um, yeah, I do find it interesting that most of the alternate cards that we mentioned post rotation are actually in that supporter category. So it does feel like they're trying to nerf a lot of the effects of the game, the consistency of the game, and lock that behind the supporters. And then
Mhm.
giving us this Meowth to say, hey, if you want that effect on demand, you can play the Meowth, but you're going to be putting a Meowth on the bench with no clear way of picking it back up, um, with another supporter on a later turn. So I do think that's an interesting choice that they seem to be making right now.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too. And Meowth is just a staple Pokemon, right? It's used in so many different decks, whether that's a one of or more of like a two of in some different decks that really need the supporter every single turn. Meowth is just a really good option Pokemon that you're going to want. So um, I think it'll see much more play than Luminion did.
Yeah.
Even though it kind of has, even though it's not as good as Tapu Lele GX, right, from way back when. I think it'll be more viable than Eldegoss was, than Luminion
Yeah.
was, and it'll be the best modern like find, or I guess I shouldn't say modern, the best in the last like 5 years,
Yeah.
5, 6 years that we've had.
I think that Luminion was a good card, but It wasn't as good as Tapu Lele for a variety of reasons, but I think the style of format it seems we're moving into is one where you're not just going to Meowth for boss. You might Meowth early game for X and Y. And like supporters, like I said, seem very important right now that you get your key supporter every turn. And so, yeah, it may be that this Meowth ends up being, even though it has the same ability, way more impactful in the style of format that we are entering into.
I also we don't have this one on screen, but it's just something that I've thought about in our conversations. If you're looking for other kind of cards to maybe get to be able to build 4 decks, specifically if you're a Dragapult fan, I would get Blaziken EXs. I've
Mm.
heard a lot of conversations about there's different ways to play Dragapult in post rotation. You can play it with the Dusknoir, you can play it without the Dusknoir. But you could also play it with Blaziken EX as a form of energy acceleration. You know, we talked about in the categories that you have of energy acceleration. I thought about it after the conversation, so I didn't bring it up at the time. But Blaziken EX, right? Being able to use that ability to bring an energy back onto one of your Pokemon is really nice in maybe some like Lily's Clefairy kind of decks that hit you for that weakness and one shot your Dragapult. You now have an alternate attacker, and it's something that's gained a lot of popularity in the different city leagues and stuff in Japan, and is definitely like a viable version to play of Dragapult. And it wouldn't even surprise me because Blaziken EX's ability is so good, right, and usable and something like that, that we could eventually, maybe not right away, but eventually see it bleed into other decks as a form of energy acceleration if you can consistently get that stage 2 online.
Yeah, you're right. Blaziken will certainly be like a weird Teal Mask Ogre Pawn for different kinds of decks. Because Teal Mask does the same thing where it's like, it's basically an energy acceleration, but you need to combo it with like an E switch if you want the energy somewhere else. Whereas Blaziken, if you're willing to put in the work for a stage 2, gets you an energy directly to one of your Pokemon.
And I think also Blaziken EX is a card that doesn't have an alternate art. Actually, as I'm going through TCG Player right now, which is kind of surprising to me as a like starter Pokemon. But yeah, it doesn't have an alternate art. It's only like $1.50 from Journey Together, so you can get this pretty cheap. Might just like get your 4 copies just to have, just in case. Because I think it's really cool, especially if you plan on playing Dragapult, which we've talked about post rotation, how Dragapult is still a pretty good deck in format.
Yeah, that deck's not going anywhere anytime soon. So,
Yeah.
but Jake, that's post rotation. How is it looking? Are you excited about it?
I'm excited for post rotation just because like there's something new going on, right? I mean, we move away from some of these older decks. We get the introduction, especially with Perfect Order, like some of these other cool archetypes that move in that like Alakazam, right? Alakazam, not super viable pre-rotation, but post-rotation, it becomes a meta contender, stuff of that nature. And even stuff like Lucario, right? Lucario, Garchomp, those have been in format, but they have not been viable because of stuff like Gardevoir that has just gate kept them, right? And other
Yeah.
kinds of decks that are rotating. So to see those like come more into the limelight, I think is really, really cool and good for the game to just bring it in. And I think there's also, I think it's this weekend, there's a Japan Champions League. So another post rotation. This one will be Chaos Rising. So we could see some like Mega Greninja EX be played. I've seen Mega Greninja played a lot with Dragapult, another way to play Dragapult. For all you people, but we could see that in the league as well, and so it could be something cool to watch, whether you watch it through the VODs or you watch it live on something like Azul's channel, you know, or something like that. I think it's going to be cool. I'm excited for post rotation. I want to play a little bit more post rotation in like, because our store, the store that hosts my like studio with this green screen and stuff, we just got approved in April to host like challenges. So we've got our challenges set for the next couple months as a new Play Store. So very excited for that. And I'll try to participate a little bit more, especially when it comes to the store.
That's awesome. Well, if you're in Vegas now, you know of one of the places you should
Yeah,
go play Pokemon.
come check out Phantasma. Very nice place.
Yeah, well, that'll do it for post rotation. We'll catch y'all next week, right?
Thank you so much for listening to the Metapod podcast, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Again, later this week, post rotation is happening on PTCG Live. Well, you'll have to wait a couple weeks for that to get enacted in locals. Let us know in the Discord server what you're playing, and you can join that by joining in the description below. We will see you all next week. Thank you so much.